Are you a Jordan Peterson fan? Then you're going to want to listen to this interview that I just did. It was a surprise interview for me. Hi, welcome to the McLean Chronicles podcast. I'm Ross McLean, and I've done some work before with Jordan Peterson in the past, doing his protection and his security, and I did an earlier podcast on this, which you can find on my YouTube channel. Jordan Peterson just had the decision come out that the Supreme Court of Canada is not going to hear his appeal to the Monkey Tribunal panel of 3 judges who say that he has to take new media training and that they're not going to look at the case. So I was just about to do another podcast on it when I got a call from an unusual source, the producer for the Greg Carrasco show. Now, Greg Carrasco, many of you will know him. He's been a media personality for a long time. He has an automotive channel where he talks about cars and problems in dealerships, but he's a real people person and apparently a fan of Jordan Peterson. So his producer contacted me and said they want to interview me about this. But I'm going to tell you, this interview was a surprise for me as well, as Greg had a rather emotional response to some of the issues that I talked about with Jordan Peterson as to why he's such an important part in this world and what censorship means. So watch, listen to this video, hit subscribe if you like it. Thanks for following. Here we go, the Greg Carrasco Show with Ross McLean.
With me, I have Ross McLean. He's a former Toronto police officer, security specialist, and commentator, host of the McLean Chronicles podcast. And he is going to talk to us about something that makes my blood boils, just like Todd said earlier, whenever we talk about taxes. And that is censorship, freedom of speech and censorship. Ross, thank you so much for joining the Carrasco Show, man. I'm super happy that you're here this morning. How are you?
Hey, Greg, I'm great. And like the person before, long-time listener, first-time caller to speak to you. So I'm really happy to do that and speak to your listeners about this important issue.
That's amazing, man. Thank you. It always humbles me when people tell me that. And the number of people that listen to my show for such a long time is like, it amazes me, man. It's so wonderful to hear that. But, I became an early adopter when it came to Jordan Peterson. I don't know why or how. His stuff started to pop up on my feed in 2016, 17, 18. And mostly I was just listening to him because of his ideas. There was a lot of ideas that had to do with accountability. It had to do with, taking ownership, with just becoming a better person, and that's ultimately what drove me to listen to Peterson. Ever since I have watched him, I have gone to see him in person, a few times. I just literally signed up for his online university. And when I heard that the college of psychologists were coming after him for people who have never been clients of him, for people who happen to be so fragile that out of a comment, they launch complaints about possibly one of the best and most important, minds of our generation. And after that, sentence him to be retrained on the very thing that he is probably the best at in the entire country. Is not only ironic, but it shows the insanity of what's taking place. Can you shed a little bit of light onto what's happening?
Yeah, I am going to shed a little bit of light onto that. And let me preface this by starting out this way. And I'm not sure if you've been accused of being humble before or not, Greg. I can tell that you do have some humbleness about you, but you're also very forthright in what you say and knowledgeable in your opinions. So let me give you this metaphor. You are sort of the Jordan Peterson to the car and the automotive world.
Thank you.
As to what he is to the psychology world. Because look, you just expressed, he's an expert in his field. He gives his opinions. He helps people out. You start following him because he tells you some things that work for you. And you start listening a little bit more. And you start understanding this guy knows what you're saying. Now, he preaches, as you said, personal responsibility. Well, you preach that to your audience as well, too, in certain areas. It's not all just a free ride. Mm-hmm. So I think what people need to understand here is Jordan Peterson is at the tip of the spear. He is one of the greatest minds of our time. He's one of the most well-known people in the world. And he was right there on censorship and controlling the words that you're allowed to think in your head. And what's happened here is a small tribunal, these little administrative tribunals at the college, they've taken in anonymous complaints from people who aren't even his patients, who never dealt with him before, claiming he can't speak about these things. And this board shuts him down and says, we might take away your license if you don't learn how to talk and toe the line. And our courts, of course, are not supporting him in that. They're letting this go. So, Greg, for you, the same thing would be if somebody anonymous put in a call about you or one of your dealerships. You don't know what it was. They're saying you're not entitled to talk about certain things, and they're going to close down your livelihood. That's about where Jordan Peterson is sitting now in this world.
You know, I tell you this. This happened on my previous 2 networks. So in the previous network, before I moved here, somebody launched an anonymous complaint about me. And then the program director decided that I wasn't allowed to speak about certain things. And I have a letter from the previous network saying that they were going to hire a live censor actor in my show that could censor me in real time if I said something that did not align with the corporate narrative. So I resign on air. I cannot have a show that is called The Greg Carrasco Show in which the Greg Carrasco thoughts are not allowed, right or wrong. Look, if you're coming to, I would say that I'm a student of the car industry, and from that, I have a lot of expertise that I can share with the community. But in as far as the rest, it's just opinions. I'm not married to any one of them because I, just like everyone else, I'm trying to work my way through this crazy world of ours, and I'm trying to figure things out. I'm wrong all the time. So don't listen to my advice. Take it into consideration. Maybe if you learn a thing or two, the job is done. But you know, when I see Jordan Peterson being used as a poster child of censorship, because I can tell you this now, they've done this to him, which is one of the most famous and important people of our generation in Canada and the world. They're using him as let me see here, as a sacrificial lamb for anyone that belongs to any professional organization or a professional association, for them not to ever say anything that is out of line, because now, you know, they can literally take your livelihood away.
No, that is where we're sitting right now. And this is where people have to pay attention to this, because this is going to affect you in your life. What's just happened, these administrative bodies, who many of them are made up of friends and appointees, and let's face it, quite frankly, political activists who do not have your best interest in mind. They have their narrative in mind as to what to do. They're going to start shutting people down. And it's funny, Greg, that you say that you went through that with the anonymous complaint. I think people really need to be aware of how much that does happen in media. It happens a lot. You get told you can't talk about things, and you're not the first person I've heard that said they're going to have a live censor sitting in the booth opposite them for what they say, which is one of the great things about Saga 960. They allow you to talk. But look, with Jordan Peterson, his importance in what he does, and as I say, I've met him a few times. I provided security for him. He is the most honest, straightforward man you're ever going to meet. He's the same as you see him in his videos on stage. He's the same backstage, how he deals with people. He loves people. He cares about people. And one of the most important things I think he does, Greg, is he has become like a father to millions and millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
He will talk, and you will see him tear up about it, where fathers and sons will come up to him and say, by listening to you, we healed our relationship. We got back together again. My life got better. And this is the guy that they want to censor. They want him not to be able to say things. Just hilarious. Just this morning before I come on air with you, I see that Richard Dawkins, you know, the famous atheist who doesn't believe there's God, everything else, all those things. He came on his Twitter account to say, oh, I just found out that my entire Facebook page in history has been deleted because I made a comment about the fact that a man won the women's boxing title.
That's
insane. They cut him off at the knees. They cut him off at the knees, Craig. And they're coming for the individual people. They're doing that in the UK right now. So Jordan Peterson is so important. He understands the world so well. It's like when they locked up Galileo, when he said, "Oh, the whole universe doesn't revolve around the Earth," and they should get into jail. They stuck him in jail for a long time. They didn't want his truth to come out. Did you know that the guy that invented telling surgeons they have to wash their hands before surgery, because that's what was killing everybody back in the day, they locked him up, said he was crazy. And yet he's the one that turned around to save lives.
You know, this is
so many times the truth speakers get locked up by the powers that be. And we don't need that in this world.
No, we don't. And, you know, look, I'm going to get personal with you right now, but I'll tell you, you know, as a professional, you know, Abraham Lincoln said once that his moral compass was so straight that even if it was a pile of dung, he wouldn't deviate from it because he'd never wanted to move away from his morality. That was in my professional life. But in my personal life, I wasn't a particularly nice person. And through listening to Jordan Peterson, through listening to his teachings, to listening to his reasoning, I decided to start holding myself to a different standard. And I can tell you that the version of Greg that today is here talking to you is in big part because he made me self-conscious about the way that I was behaving. And how can I be a good influence or example to the people who listen to me or my children if there is incongruency of my actions and my words? So I think that we owe a lot more to him that we care to give him credit for. Just because he happens to be perceived as someone who is right-leaning, it doesn't take away the incredible things that we have gotten from him. He has been a thought leader for countless of young men specifically and women, because every time I go to his lectures, I'll tell you, man, there is men and women and everyone dresses up to go see him. It's so wonderful. And I don't think that we are giving him the respect that he deserves. You know, I am embarrassed sometimes to listen to what Canada is doing to their best. You know, how long shall we kill our prophets? This song says. And this is what we're doing to one of the most brilliant minds of our generation.
Boy, you said a mouthful there and you finished it. It is true that in Canada, we tend to eat our own when they get successful. That could be a whole other show for going into that. But look, the personal testimony that you just gave, and look, Peterson has helped. I guarantee you, you're getting, if I can say it, amens across the airwaves from many people in your audience who have listened to him and said, I better pick up my game. I never considered that. And Greg, to bring it back to the car metaphor, when someone comes in to get their car fixed in your shop, you tell them the truth. Mm-hmm. Now, they may not always want to hear the truth. I'll go somewhere else. I don't want to hear it. But you're telling them, no, you're going to have to fix this part. If you don't get your front end straightened out, your car will never perform well, right? And, people either do or don't want to listen. Those people who can take correction and get better in life, and we all need to get better in life, need to have that voice out there. So it would be the same, like I said, to go back to the metaphor, of you not being allowed to say anything mentioning any model names, cars, or years, or what you think is worth it, or what you think is bad, or what you think is great, or what you think people need to do. That's where we're getting to. And it affects every person here. It affects your children. It affects your children's children. I mean, Greg, we would all be driving Ladas with only Lada dealerships in this country if it continues the way that it's going with this censorship.
This is a terrible state of affairs that we find ourselves here, especially with Jordan Peterson. Now, thankfully, Jordan Peterson has reached escape velocity. He is above all of this stuff. I mean, even if they pull his license, he's going to be just fine, believe me. But, I mean, the principle of the matter is this, that we are trying to silence opinions that don't agree with our narrative. And that's never a good thing. You need to be able to defend people's opinions, even if you disagree with them. That's the whole point of us exposing bad ideas through sunlight. Look, I don't know what the solution of this is. Where do you think that this is going with Jordan Peterson? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I'm afraid what's going to happen, you can just go over and watch on social media. You won't see it on any of the mainstream media. What's going on over in the UK today? People are being locked up for retweeting or disagreeing with the government. They're getting taken and put in jail inside of a week for more than 2 years if they disagree with the government for how they're handling things. And that's what Peterson did when he first went up to Ottawa to talk about the compelled speech.
Yep.
And let me tell you something, Greg. I will tell you something about Jordan Peterson. He is like a block of pig iron on his principles. You can hit him with a hammer. You can do whatever you want. You are not beating the principles out of this guy. And he is not doing this fight for himself. Like you said, he's doing very well. He works harder than any 10 people you can think of put together. He's not doing this. He's doing this for our society, for the pool that we all live in as people. Imagine if your children aren't able to talk and discuss ideas going forward. They can only do what they are told by the government to say. And he says that is where this is going. I mean, the metaphor again of the car industry, Greg, where did it come from between the 1960s to today? Did it get better because there was competition, open talk, and people working together to make things better? Or did it get this way because everybody was told to shut up and buy your Ford in any color you want so long as it's black? What made the difference? Humans being able to create and talk and move things forward. And that's the tip of the spear that Jordan Peterson is fighting for each one of us.
Ross, I'm going to extend an invitation because there's so much meat on this bone that we should have known this. I will call you after the show, and maybe we can set up a time in which we can have a long format conversation here on air, because I appreciate your viewpoint. And I think that we need to talk a little bit more about freedom of speech in Canada, because I think it's disappearing quickly. But we need to sign off on the show. And this is Ross McLean, everyone. And I really appreciate you being here, Ross. This was caught me by surprise, and I'm thankful for you bringing your opinions to sunlight, and we can share this a little bit more hopefully next week. And are you cool with that?
I'm good with that. And people can find me on YouTube at the McLean Chronicles podcast, Greg. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing weekend, Ross.